Hello to our viewers from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Today we're in the office of Dr. Michael Thaut, who is professor of music here at the University of Toronto. He's also director of the Music and Health Research Center here at the University of Toronto, and he also has a cross appointment as a professor of neuroscience. Some of you know that I'm quite a follower of Dr. Thaut, and I'm very appreciative of the research that he has done over the years, and even more so appreciative of the clinical applications of that research. So Dr. Thaut, thank you for giving us some of your time today and
thanks for doing
answer
this.
a few questions.
It's great.
Questions for us. How has your move, which I believe was now almost a year ago, how was your move from Colorado State at Fort Collins up here to the University of Toronto? How's it going?
Well, it went well. It was a big move. We have to admit, it was a big move to pack up and go. I felt very honored that the University of Toronto is one of the best in the world, that they offered me this position, and they also offered Corrine a position. So the package was great. And but I have to say, it's a good place to live. Toronto is a wonderful city. The Canadian system is wonderful, it's welcoming, and the kids have gotten used to things, and they have great opportunities. They're in that age where education is a very important part, but they're also semi-independent now. They can hop at the subway and go places, and so it was a big adjustment, but it was a good move.
Great. So Toronto's a good place for you and your family to live.
Yeah, it's a great
Excellent.
place. Great place.
Excellent. And the university?
University is, as I said, I didn't know that. I sort of said, well, I wonder, I'm going to this university. I took a job. I wonder if there's some rankings, and I was actually almost shocked that in all those international rankings, they're always in the top 25. So I was like, wow.
Okay.
Wow, that's an honor
So
to be here.
that's wonderful.
It's
Wonderful.
It's an honor to be here.
That is great. Great. I listened to a recorded radio interview with you one time, and where you kind of recounted a little bit about your family history, your early education, your advanced education, and how you came to be from a musician to a musician scientist, so to speak, or a musician neuroscientist. You told a little bit of that story this morning at the conference we're both attending. Can you kind of summarize that for our viewers?
Yeah, it took a little bit of a, not necessarily not a zigzag, but just it's a non-linear process. You go in different directions.
Wasn't a straight line shot.
Yeah, well, there's what I do. There's no straight line to that.
Right.
It comes from many different angles. So it's sort of built over time, I think. At my first degree, my German degree, was actually in psychology and education. I wasn't sure about the music business. And but I come from a musical family, so studying music is there's a lot of musicians in my family. So, but then when I was in that program, I actually realized I wanted to do professional full-time with music. So I started playing actually all kinds of stuff. A lot of folk music professionally, toured Europe very successfully. So I fiddled my way through life for a few years.
Did some gigs.
We played. I counted up at one time. We played probably between 500 and 600 gigs in 5 years or 6 years.
Wow.
And we made 4 LPs. So it was very, very successful.
That's great. Yeah, you cut record. Not many people these days know what an LP is.
Yeah.
33 1/3, right? That's right.
Yeah. So then I went to Salzburg to the Mozarteum and did my music studies there, and then got I wasn't sure what I would do after that, so I had heard about the word music therapy. I saw a book once in Germany, and it sounded interesting, so I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't also not sure if I wanted to continue playing professionally. Music, band, kind of, your survival rate's kind of low, unhealthy lifestyle. So anyway, I got a Fulbright scholarship to go to Michigan State, and it was an interdisciplinary PhD under the umbrella of music education. It was of music psychology, music therapy.
Great
program.
music school.
Michigan State is a very, very good music school.
Right.
And I had a great experience there, and had great mentors that really sort of triggered this idea. We need to still change this whole business with music and therapy and medicine. We pushed it that far, but it's not where it needs to be. So, in that sense, I wasn't supposed to follow somebody. I was my mentor, especially Bob Ankifer was my big mentor. He was more like, he was actually one of the pioneers of American music therapy from the 50s. So he said, we got to get this business back into science. I mean, they tried it in the beginning, but there was not much human brain science in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We got to get this thing into science. And so when I went to Colorado State as an assistant professor, I started trying to come up with a different paradigm to research and then hopefully also translate music into the clinic. And maybe from some of my psychology background, plus my research assistantship at Michigan State was actually in music psychology. So I went into the music psychology, the music perception and cognition and music production arena, because I also was growing at that time heavily, and I thought, can we extract from how the brain processes music in the areas of attention, memory, cognition, executive function, motor control, speech language, are there mechanisms in music that could be translated or transferred to non-musical functions? So in other words, can we help somebody through singing to regain speech, or can we help somebody with listening to music and responding to different changes in the music? Can we help them actually retrain auditory attention?
Mm-hmm.
So we use the idea of music as a language that has some generic functions in the core that are not just restricted to music. So that was the hypothesis I came up with, the premise. So I went into something that music therapy had really ignored up to that. They were not familiar with music perception and cognition literature. So I went into that. And then we picked one element of music, which was rhythm. That's the harness of music, rhythm. And we wanted to see if the idea of rhythmic cues and rhythmic stimulation actually has an impact, not just on how to learn my instrument, rather than if that can have an impact on functional motor control too. So we started working with stroke patients. Their gait, the asymmetric gait, improved tremendously.
Yes.
And then we got a grant from the U.S. Administration on Aging for Parkinson's disease. Very different type of movement disorder, but the asymmetry was not an issue, but the freezing, the akinesia, the bradykinesia, it all worked to an extent that was quite amazing, actually. Mm-hmm. So this idea of pulling these transfer functions out of music perception and production was the correct idea, I thought.
Yes.
And it's really changed how people looked at the data. And so the big question, the neuroscience and the medical community accepted our research really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Music therapy was actually, that went a lot slower, interestingly.
I see. The music people were a little slower to come along.
There were very different philosophies.
Yes.
About music in therapy. So the medical and the neuroscience community accepted that because they recognized it was good research. But the interesting question came at the late 1997, 98, 99. So people went to a presentation, like a neurologist who runs some unit in somewhere in the country, and he says, "This is fantastic, it's great data. Who can do that?" Mm. He was like, good question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He said, "Well, we have a music therapist on staff, but they don't know how to do this. They don't do that stuff. They do different things." I said, "Okay. Well, the physical therapists, they're not necessarily trained in this auditory business. Now they are, actually, many are now." So this is when we started that was not on my original agenda at all. I just thought I'm going to do research for the next, whatever, 20 years. But then we created this, we had to create some clinical branch.
Yes.
And so Jerry McIntosh, who was the neurologist, my co-researcher, and Ruth Rice, who is now she's a doctorate in physical therapy, but she had worked for me in my lab for many years, and then Corinne, who was a research associate, and myself, we went essentially through the research literature that had sort of accumulated about auditory and music function and clinical transfer.
Okay.
And wherever we found like a cluster of evidence, we said, let's create a technique. So like with the whole rhythm business, that became RAS,
Okay.
so gait training.
Mm-hmm.
Then there also, there were some research papers that looked not just at rhythm, but they also looked at music multidimensionally. So like pitch, timbre, can be translated into force cues or into spatial cues. So we created PSE and so forth. And we came up, I think, with 16 techniques where we thought we could back that up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started teaching that stuff. And we started with 20 people, and now we have probably taught 3,500, and 25 of those, 100 of those are still, they hold certificates in what NMT. It was just a simple continuing education certificate that we issued. And it became really a big deal to have that.
Sure.
And we didn't have that planned. It just sort of happened, which is probably the best way. Things should happen that way. And now we have 2,500, as I said, 27 countries or something like this. World Federation of Neurorehab has endorsed that, and the Certification Board of Music Therapy, we are advanced provider. So the NMT Academy, that is sort of the clinical machine, the motor for the clinic. My main job is not in the academy. My main job is in the university. I do run the research center here, and we have a PhD program and master's program attached to that to continue to build the research base. And in this environment here, it's a very vibrant research environment, and there's actually a lot of people who are very interested in this neuroscience approach to music and then transferring clinical functions out of that.
Yes, yes. And that's what people like me and many of the viewers out there are most interested in and most appreciate, because that's the real application of the research for the benefit of the person who has a stroke or a brain injury or Parkinson's disease, whatever.
Yep.
But speaking about research, I know you have research going here now, and you've always got something cooking. What's looking hot? And I look around the room here, and I see some gadgets. I see some displays. What's happening? What's shaking?
Well, that's just my office.
There's more.
Well, they're building a research lab in a different building.
Wonderful.
But the University of Toronto has sort of like 10 teaching hospitals and then on campus multiple research centers.
Wow.
So right now, since I have all these cross appointments, a lot of the data-driven research we do in existing labs.
Okay.
And so I don't have to. I don't really do any research in this particular office. But
okay.
So we are actually looking at more in depth with Parkinson's disease. We're gonna look at we can brain image here in Toronto. We can brain image dopamine.
Wow.
So you are a great example. I mean, your exercise with music is very noteworthy. And we have good data, and other research places have replicated that this stuff really works. But we want to look at some of the neurological mechanisms. So is there enhancement in dopamine release when you walk to rhythm?
Yes.
And when you exercise with the musical within the musical structure. So that's a big one we're working on right now. That's we hopefully start.
Question about that, detailed question. With the imaging, can you actually see an increase in dopamine?
Mm-hmm.
You can. That's amazing.
It has to be. It's not in the fMRI system. You have to use PET, P-E-T.
Yes. Okay.
Where you get the radioactive traces injected and then it stays in the system for a little bit and washes out.
Okay.
And then you can sort of block the uptake of the dopamine with some other injections, and then you can see if there is an increase or reduction or whatever. So that's actually possible. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. If you ever want to take a picture of my head, just let me know. I'd be glad for you to do that. That'd be pretty cool.
You know, we may fly you in as a subject.
I'm glad to be a subject. That's just fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating.
That is fascinating to me too, because we are working on an fMRI study with Parkinson's disease, and we see some interesting plasticity changes, how the cerebellum helps out in the primary motor centers. That study is still going on with Colorado, with the University of Colorado, and Colorado State. But the dopamine, that's also a new territory for me. So that's something that I think is very interesting. We're looking at, I said this morning, we're looking at the brain networks for long-term musical memory formation.
Right.
And do some biomarker imaging to see if there's maybe some sparing mechanisms we can identify. Why? Because there is pretty good evidence that patients with Alzheimer's disease keep musical memories longer, vibrant and active than a lot of other memories.
Yes.
And so that's another study. We're working on a study with taking a bit of a different approach to working with autistic children through NMT techniques, emphasizing movement training and attention training, see if that has some effects on their cognitive, social, language development. Traumatic brain injury is maybe the last I should mention. Very little research with traumatic brain injury and rehabilitation in general. And so we are looking at RES for the first time. Nobody has ever done that in gait mobility training with traumatic brain injury.
Okay, very good. Very good.
So some highlights.
Appreciate those highlights. I wanted to just tell you just a real quick story, and I'm watching our time. I was talking to a caregiver a few weeks ago, and one of the persons that she provides care for is Alzheimer's patient, and she's in like almost a nursing home setting, but she still has this caregiver comes in and works with her. This lady has become non-communicative. She doesn't speak. Doesn't speak. I'll be darned. They were taking her back to her room the other day, and she passed the piano. The lady, the Alzheimer's patient, used to play the piano very well. She sat at the piano and played, which I find unbelievable. Just fantastic.
Yeah, and that's we have really pretty good, solid research evidence. People have, I have not done much of that dementia research, but there are a lot of groups that have done very, very good music-related dementia research. And yes, these musical memories for songs, for lyrics, or even for, let's say, motor performance, that's a musical memory too. If I still remember how to use my fingers to play a song.
Sure.
So that's why we're trying to do this study, to get a little closer to, can we identify the mechanisms? Because if we know why and how that stuff works, I think we can also formulate some more specific interventions to help boost cognitive status, at least in little islands of sort of lucidness. Okay, I mean, we cannot we cannot reverse the course of the disease at this point in time, but we can maybe create a sense of just boost functions as long as we can.
Sure. I think that's a wonderful thing, and it's a comfort to the family and friends of the person, because there for a moment they get a glimpse of the person they knew, where otherwise they have lost that.
Yeah, and those are very touching moments. You know, I've
Yes,
seen
bring
some,
tears.
seen some of them myself. The other thing is that if some of that helps to orient the person a little bit to where they are, you know, spouse, day, time, children, we would hope that maybe some of these restless anxiety states and agitation states that often accompany that,
Yes.
that may also be reduced because the person may feel a little more oriented. So they're less than that. Maybe there's some of that confusion that creates some of this agitation.
Sure.
May also
Calm-
ameliorate a little
settle
bit.
it down.
Settle down a little bit.
Sure, that's wonderful. Michael, if we had a person in here who has something of a musical background, not an accomplished musician necessarily, but the musical background of some type, and was interested in the health profession, maybe working with stroke victims or people with traumatic brain injury, what would you like to say to them to encourage them to at least consider that field? What kind of education should they be seeking? Just what would you think about saying to them?
Well, if you want to become a neurologic music therapist, those are music degrees. So they have to have a music
degrees.
degree.
Okay.
And then music plus, you know, they have to take abnormal psych and neuroscience and cognitive psych and all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it starts. And if you want to sort of study that from bottom up as a young person out of high school, you have to look for you probably have to go into a music therapy program, but look for one that actually has the NMT orientation.
Right.
There are programs out there.
Right.
A big boost for all rehab professions is the availability of these NMT courses that the Academy offers.
Yes.
We have not just music therapists show up, that we have
Occupational,
physical,
physical.
PT, SLP, neuropsychologists, neurologists. We have the whole gamut of rehab professions
Sure.
that come, and,
Sure.
and they may not be able to do all the musical sophistication in the structure of the exercise, but you can also simplify some of that stuff.
Sure.
And it's still very
Sure.
effective.
Another route, in other words, if somebody wanted to pursue physical therapy
Mm-hmm.
as a degree, then they can tack on to that down the road NMT training
Yeah.
and add that as a skill set or a service that they offer in their
Yeah.
profession.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we do have, as I said, we have PTs all over the world, actually. I can't tell you how many, maybe 100 or something, maybe more, that have the NMT certificate.
Sure. Sometimes we don't like to think about these things, but we're all going to leave this world at some point in time, as best we can tell right now.
Yes.
And so, have you ever thought, when you take your leave of this world, how you'd like folks to remember you in terms of your profession, your research, your accomplishments? How would you like folks to think about you when you're gone?
Professionally, well, I hope I made some significant change in what we can do with music. If we use the right model, we can do a lot more than sort of this compensatory well-being concept. We can
Yes.
actually change the brain through these very functional applications, but we have to operate from the correct model. And maybe my contribution I would like to be remembered for is I created a theory basis that was very different than what existed before
Yes.
in music therapy, and the theory basis of, we already said that several times, you know, the neuroscience of music perception and production and music cognition, and then the transfer functions. I think that's maybe my eureka moment in life when I figured that out and we started testing that, and it actually it was true. It was the right way.
It was the proof of the pudding, wasn't it?
Yeah, you are also, and you're living proof in
a
this.
beneficiary of that.
Yeah,
For sure, for sure. I believe that you've accomplished that, but before you leave us, hopefully many years from now, I know you're going to accomplish much more and
Thanks,
increase our learning, and
right.
we'll get even a deeper understanding of the model, and we'll get broader applications in the clinic to help people.
That's right.
So-
Oh yeah, we'll continue that. As next year is the Martin Luther Memorial Year, and as he said, even if the world goes down tomorrow, I still plant a tree.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Michael, thank you for having us here as your guest in your office. We appreciate
Thanks for coming.
it.
Thanks for
And
coming and
for your
speaking
time
to the conference.
to answer our questions and for folks to get better acquainted with you. They saw,
Wonderful.
hopefully they saw what the real Michael Thaut is like,
Okay.
and I find him to be a very likable human being.
Well, you're a very kind man.
And he's been very generous with his information and been very kind to me in every way. So I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure for Joy and I to be visiting with you here this afternoon.
Thanks. It's my pleasure to have you here.
Okay, and good luck to you.
Good luck to you too.